wait for our recorder, by the way, so she's got.
This brings us to the speaker portion of our meeting on this day of, what's the date today, guys? April the 13th in Doylestown, PA, at the Monday night 6 p.m. The Stay Alive Literature and Step Group meeting at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Kevin, and he's going to be sharing his experience on Step 3. So let's welcome Kevin.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin. I'm definitely an alcoholic.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi,
Kevin.
Good to be back to this meeting. I used to be a big regular at this meeting. Been running up to Regalsville most Mondays recently at the direction of my sponsor, but always good to be here. Luckily, there's not too many of the same people here from the last time that I spoke, so not too many people are going to have to sit through a repeat, but I do have to qualify myself first. Basically how I ended up in front of you. I grew up right up the road, first in Quakertown and then in Percy. I'm the second oldest of 4 siblings. You know, I had a good family. Mom and dad are still together. But always kind of ran with the bad kids, even from a young age. You know, I was giving off signs, you know, that I had like a kind of spiritual malady before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. You know, from a young age, I was that kid that was always in trouble. Didn't matter what it was, you know, if it was the wrong thing, I was usually going to do it as opposed to the right thing. Around like 12 years old is probably when I had like my first like real drink. You know, I grew up in one of those families where like you could have some sips of beer or whatever when you were younger, but probably 12 is like when I started drinking and using other substances seriously, I would guess. And that kind of just really accelerated like all through high school. I was an athlete, but I was also a terrible student, even though I was capable of being a good student. Really just cared mostly about working, playing sports, and partying as much as I could. And I took every opportunity that I could to do that. And that's really where it kind of became evident, probably junior year, senior year of high school, that I was an alcoholic. Even then, you know, I couldn't even defend myself or hide it. You know, I started getting underages in high school. I actually got a DUI in high school, which is like pretty hard to do. Not many people do that. And then, I kind of buttoned myself up a little bit towards the end of high school. I did a gap year. I was supposed to go into the military. That didn't happen with the DUI, so I kind of had to figure that out and put my life back together. So that was the first time that I saw like the real consequences of my actions. All my other friends were off living their life, you know, doing their thing, and I was sitting at home in community college, you know, just working. And ended up working out, you know. Ended up getting recruited to play rugby at the University of Arizona, and luckily I did very good at Bucks, because that whole DUI experience and like the reality of kind of, you know, the writing on the wall that I was becoming a loser scared me enough to kind of figure out my life momentarily, at least. But then when I got out to school, it was kind of back to the same old me. That's when the drinking really took off in college. Like, it was when it really became like a daily thing, to the point where I couldn't control it at all, and it was controlling me. College was a mess. It's a miracle that I graduated. I think that's just comes down to my stubbornness. You know, like most alcoholics are stubborn. That's one time that it worked out well for me. But yeah, that kind of is the way my story just carried on. I graduated college and immediately took a job living in Wilmington, Delaware. And that's where my alcoholism got like really bad. It's when it started to like affect my health, and especially my mental health. I was just like destroying myself with alcohol. I was drinking every single night, wake up in the morning, throw up, go to work. I did that for about a year, and it was pretty obvious that it wasn't sustainable in any way, shape, or form. I remember they wanted to send me to Georgia to go and manage a supply warehouse for electrical equipment, the company I was working for. And I guess that was like the first time that I was truly honest with myself, and the first time that I maybe surrendered a little bit was like, I can't go and do that right now. There's no way I can come and like perform and be responsible for managing other people in the state I'm in. So that was the first of, unfortunately, a few times that I've had to put my hand up and ask for help. Pretty much told my parents, that I had a major drinking problem. They're like, yeah, we know, there's no surprise there. I told them, that I wanted to move back home and get sober because I knew that I couldn't do it without a support system. I was trying on my own for pretty much that whole year and it wasn't working. So I moved back home. They gave me 30 days to live with them, which was pretty fortunate, with where our relationship was at that point. And I started attending an outpatient treatment program called Peace Valley Recovery, which is outside of Doylestown, which was a great experience. Per their recommendation, I moved into a sober house, and I lived there for like over 6 months, Sunlight of the Spirit House in Lansdale, Hatfield area. And that was a great experience. Unfortunately, I haven't been sober since October 2023 when I started the whole time continuously. But if I never went to that sober house and if I never went to IOP, I don't think I would be in AA right now. I don't know where I would be at. From there, life started to get better, Luckily, I never had any employment issues through all of my alcoholism. I was always able to get up and go to work for the most part. So I was working, a job using my degree, lived in the sober house for a while, and then I moved to Doylestown to a really nice spot off of West Court Street, right opposite of like CB West High School. And things were going better, and I was putting together like some time, but I couldn't keep it together, all the time for good. I don't know, because in my mind I feel like I have surrendered, but I've always found a reason to pick back up, and it's never luckily been for like long amounts of time or any life destroying things, but there's been some bad nights, and there's been some mistakes that I've made in the rooms of AA. So if you're going to hear one thing about my story, it's going to be about a little bit of suffering in the rooms of AA and making mistakes, and I'm just hopeful that someone can hear that and learn from that, and maybe not repeat some of the things that I've done. But yeah, things were going really well. Last time I had spoken here, I think might have been like September. I'm not exactly sure. And man, I thought I was on top of the world. I had just gotten a new job that was like the right amount of money where I'm like, I can actually have a life now, and do all the things that I wanted to do. I had a girlfriend at the time that I really liked. It had a great place that I was living in. Everything was going well. And then beginning of October, I was 11 months sober, which is the most time I've ever had in the 3 years I've been trying. I guess I thought that, I was stronger over alcohol or had lost my fear of it or something, but I went to a bachelor party in Atlantic City, New Jersey, which I probably had no business going to, being an alcoholic. But I was with friends who knew about my sobriety, so I thought I was safe and I thought I was in the right frame of mind to go. First night I stayed sober. Second night, some things happened. I wasn't planning on going out, but I ended up going out to the casino. And as you guys probably know, that at the casino they give you free drinks. And I don't even know what happened. Like in my mind, I'm like, this is fine. I'm not gonna drink. I'm good. And the next thing I know, there was a rum and coke in my hands that one of the waitresses had given me. And then I was drinking it. Like that's my insanity with alcohol. That like I will do all this work to go to AA and all this work on myself, and then I'm still very defenseless against the first drink. If 51% of me decides that I want to drink, I am very, very bad at stopping myself from it, no matter what consequences might come. So from that situation in October, that had really caused problems in my home life that I was trying to fix, and it just wasn't really working. I was trying to do things my way, fix everything, work a new job at the same time, which, as you guys can know, a new job can always be stressful whenever you start. And I didn't make it very long. I made it until about the middle of December, and just all the stress had gotten to me, and I got a case of the F-its, and went out and met some of my buddies and got very drunk. From that point, the girl that I was with at the time, she's a great girl, but she was just like, I can't stay with you, and I couldn't blame her either. You know, I can't even keep myself sober. How can I ask someone else to deal with that? Signed over the apartment to her, the beautiful place I was living in, and I couldn't live with myself, so I stayed drunk for like 2 or 3 weeks, you know, that I screwed everything up. Came back into the rooms, you know, after that like 2 or 3 week bender, the week of Christmas, you know, and I've been doing the thing since then. A little bit of a God moment that I guess kind of happened. That first AA meeting that I went back to was at Andrews Hall, right up the street up here. And like I had like a drink like that day, and like I just got honest about it. And there was a guy sitting there who I knew from working at Peace Valley. I used to go to Recovery Dharma meetings with him too from time to time. And at this point I had no sponsor. You know, I've had 2 sponsors before that we did the steps, but they were more of kind of like a buddy type of situation more than a sponsor almost. And I knew this guy was going to be tough on me, and like in the moment I was just desperate enough to ask him. And he's been my sponsor since then, and we've been working together, and it's been great. He still makes me call him every day. One day I didn't call him, he made me do 500 push-ups. So like this guy takes his career very seriously, which is what I need. You know, I need to take this seriously, because for a guy like me, it's truly life or death, no matter how much I try to convince myself that it's not. Which kind of brings me to where I'm at now. When I moved out of my last place I was living at, I went and kind of lived with a friend for like 5 weeks while I was looking for a new place. And kind of just like hid from the world. You know, I was going to AA and going to work, but that was about it. I was just, you know, very ashamed of myself. Like, not proud to say it, but like fell into like a little bit of like a funk, like depression type of thing. And really just kind of felt sorry for myself for like a pretty long time, which is ridiculous. But I mean, that's something that alcoholics can have. It's something that I have, is like the victim mentality, where it's like I caused all my problems, but still felt bad about it. I got to the point where I realized that I'm like, that's not doing anything for anybody. It's not helping me. It's not helping the people around me that, you know, I've let down repeatedly. So, I mean, I decided to just dive back into the work. That's kind of where I've been at since then. Like I said, I've not been to this meeting much because I've been running around like crazy to different meetings, just trying to mix things up, you know, make some changes to my program. Like, whatever I was doing, it'll work for a while, work for 3 months, 6 months, you know, almost a year, but the wheels always fall off at some point. So, you know, I gotta make changes to my lifestyle and to my program to hopefully be successful this time permanently. Started working with a therapist and a psychiatrist, and started addressing some things, you know, that maybe I never got to address in the steps, or didn't think was a big deal at the time. I'm not really sure, because I thought that I've worked the steps honestly every time that I've done them, but for some reason I'm still always going back out. Which kind of brings me to working step 3. You know, like I said, I've been through the steps twice before, and read the big book I don't know how many times, you know, at different meetings and stuff. I'm sure I've read it cover to cover, different versions, maybe every version, you know, at least once. But one that I've always struggled with is step 3, you know, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. That was always confusing for me. I never had any problems with the God thing. I was not raised in organized religion, but that was never a doorway or a roadblock for me in this program like it is for some people. I was like, listen, like if I'm trying to give up drinking, which has like been one of my only answers to most of the issues that I have going on in my own personality and spirituality, I can say God exists, and you know, it can be whatever you want. It can, you know, it doesn't really matter. It just matters that it's not you. But I never really knew what it meant to like turn your will over. And you know, that's something that gets debated like a lot, like in and outside of these rooms, what that really means to live by God's will. So maybe that's been one of my roadblocks. I've never like truly understood that. But I have made a lot of changes in my spiritual aspect of my program in the last couple months too. Since October, I've been in an OCIA program with the Catholic Church, which is like for adults who want to convert and get confirmed into the Catholic Church. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't start doing it for me in the beginning. You know, it wasn't really my journey when I started it. It was just like, all right, like I'll do it. It'll look good on paper. Catholic Church can't mess with my life if I want to do anything, you know, later on, like get married or get a kid baptized or something. So I'm like, it's not bad to do. But through that program and through, you know, relapsing while I was in the program and really going through kind of a dark, rough winter, really did help me grow in my faith. I don't want to scare anyone away in these rooms, you know, if you're not religious or you're a different religion. It doesn't have to be organized religion. It just happens to be where I'm at in my story right now and what I find, you know, working for me. So yeah, I mean, I'm in this OCIA program and I'm in AA. So I'm trying to work on my spirituality on a daily basis, but I still don't really understand what it means to turn your will over to God as you understand Him. One big thing is with like all my relapses is that I realize that I can't do anything in life by myself, especially most importantly, stay sober. I've put a lot of effort into staying sober. And, you know, it's been good for the most part, but my time's not perfect. You know, my sobriety date should be October 2023, and it's not. And that's from me trying to run off of self-will and not leaning on other people enough. So if I realize that I can't rely on myself to regulate my own spirituality, worldview, or sobriety, then I got to lean on a power higher than myself. That's where I kind of get confused. You know, you hear some people say, like, God works for people who work for themselves. You hear other people say, like, you know, everything is God's will. It'll all work out. God has a plan for you. I'm kind of leaning more towards the latter now, but one thing that I've definitely done in my sobriety journey is just constantly worn myself out by just running into a brick wall, whether that's overworking or trying to force people to behave the way that I think that they should behave, or you know, over diving into AA and then burning myself out on AA. Seems like the harder I try to make things go my way, the more the opposite happens most of the time. And that's kind of true because right now in my life I'm kind of lost. You know, I know that sobriety is definitely the answer for me, just based on my track record and the fact that I do so terribly with drugs and alcohol. But I'm not really sure what other direction my life is taking besides for that. One thing I am doing, you know, that is turning my will over is that I say yes to anything that I get asked in AA. And also any other service opportunities that I get asked for outside of AA. I'm actually speaking at 4 masses this week upcoming. The priest of Our Lady of Mount Carmel asked me to speak about my experience converting to Catholicism, so I'll be speaking at the 5 p.m. Saturday Mass, the 7, 9, and 10:15 Sunday Mass over there, which is not that scary because I'm used to speaking in AA. It's a lot more people, you know. I probably won't bring up the AA side of things with the anonymity, but hopefully people can take something away from my message there too when I'm talking, because it's really has been it's been a help for me. You know, I wouldn't say it's been a comfort because you know, I'm kind of a realist, but it's definitely been a help for me getting into organized religion. So if I'm trying to turn my will and my life over to God as I understand Him, that means you got to try and live by God's will. And one thing I definitely know from my experience is that God's will for me isn't to continue to keep relapsing, you know, and giving people hope, you know, for a couple months in a row and then going out and having like a terrible night just because I'm selfish or I'm not feeling good internally or something like that. I don't think God's will for anybody in this room is to hurt other people. I don't think that that's His plan for any of us, you know. So I'm trying to take action to turn my will over to God. You know, I now am a baptized and confirmed Catholic. I think that that's like a real actionable, you know, measure. Like I said, I say yes to everything that I can, service related. I try to attend church. I try to stay in contact with my higher power. I'm not perfect with that, but I try and get on my knees when I wake up and when I go to bed. Anything that I have a problem with now, I take it to God, and then I take it to my sponsor as well, which is really like what a sponsor's kind of for, and I've never really used them like that before, and wouldn't you believe it, it's helpful, to call someone and tell them about what crazy thoughts you have going on in your head. So, I think that step 3 is also about acceptance too, which is one of my biggest struggles. If you're going to turn your will over to God, you're going to have to accept a lot of things that you don't like. And that's not really how I was raised. I was kind of raised like you change the things that you can't accept, not to accept the things that you cannot change. And that's been hard for me. Recovery for me has been an unlearning process in a lot of ways. And that's something that I'm still trying to unlearn and understand that balance. I don't know what God's plan is for me, and I'm kind of lost, but I'm trying to have open eyes towards it. Just to do the next right thing and try and build myself into like the right type of guy, like someone that I can be proud of. I'm not gonna lie, I still do carry around a lot of regret, mainly about opportunities that I've messed up, people that I've hurt, just that my life hasn't worked out the way I planned it, which I don't think anyone's does, but I always thought that like going through the 5th step, I feel like a weight off my shoulders. That didn't happen the first 2 times I did it. I never felt like a sense of relief after doing it. Then I was like, all right, maybe like when I get baptized and confirmed, maybe I'll feel like a sense of relief. I'm like, if I can be forgiven by God for my sins, why can't I forgive myself? And that didn't happen either, but it's probably a right step in the right direction. And, it's probably something that takes years, but my eyes are open to that possibility. So by working step 3, there's a couple benefits that I hope to achieve and work towards. Number 1 being like relief from feeling like I need to be solely responsible for solving all my problems, or that I always need to be responsible over my emotions, or that I always need to be in control. Because when I'm sober, a lot of times, I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to do everything right. I'm going to be a control freak. I'm going to save a bunch of money, work out all the time. And I end up crashing and burning because I stress myself out too much. Want to treat others well. I think that I've always kind of have when I am not drinking, but I can always make changes. I can always do more for other people and live less selfishly. I think that's a lot of what this program's about. The more I get out of self, the easier it is for me to stay sober. Besides for that, like I said, not bottling up my emotions is something that I'm working on. Talking to other people, talking to God, talking to my sponsor. I don't think it's God's will for anyone to carry like the burden of life alone, So just trying to stay connected with other people, build a community in sobriety. And I have a little bit, but I can make improvements on that. And then finally, I just desperately need to lighten kind of the burden that I've put on myself a little bit with the overthinking or the holding myself to standards that I can't always match up to. And then, I'm finally, I'm looking for some direction in my life, and, I'm hoping that God will give me some of that direction, because this time last year, I had a plan and everything was going to plan. And I was kind of getting everything that I wanted, through sobriety and through AA mainly. And, I forgot about that. And now that plan's kind of gone, and now I'm not back to where I was 3 years ago. I've learned a lot more before I started to get sober. I've learned a lot of skills. I have a lot of sober time under my belt, even if it's not continuous. I've become a much better person. Nobody's really, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but not many people are mad at me right now, which is a big improvement from when I came in here 3 years ago. It's not all bad, even if you struggle in the rooms of AA. It's better to struggle in the rooms of AA and be here and get your seat back than it is to be out there. So, if you take one thing away from my message today, and not that you have to keep knocking yourself down, but if you knock yourself down here in these rooms, or you slip up, just get right back into it, man. Like, I've dealt with that shame of like coming back and you have to raise your hand again and be like, I'm a newcomer again. It's better to be here than to be out, across the street sitting on the bar stool. I'm just gonna keep working at it, man. I'm never gonna quit trying to quit. But yeah, hopefully God will help me out a little bit with that. I want to thank you all for letting me speak. I think that's all I have for you right now.